So I'm just going to show you quick how I do scales or lizard skin on a quick isosphere. I'll just do 6 subdivisions. I'll do another one just so we can get a fine mesh. But the first thing I'm going to do is remesh. This should give a nice fine mesh to sculpt on. Get it a little bit larger. The first thing I do with my brushes, I set up the stroke so that the custom fall off will have a little bit overhanging, so there's an area that is 100% affected. And then drag this over so that the fall off is more steep and then gradual. And then I basically just start drawing circles, which actually I need to do subtract. And you just draw circles. I'll draw a few circles because I do add a little bit of depth to these. And just fill in all the creases with circles of different size. And you can even make some much larger, some much more long, some more square shaped, and it'll all generally look okay. Just as long as they're not too uniform. So I think this is going to be fine for now. The next thing I'll do is I'll do add, make my brush a bit larger, and decrease the strength a little bit. And I'll just add some depth to these just by doing a little ring on each one of them. That'll be good enough for now. Go back into object mode and I'll shade the smooth. And to add a material, I've already procured a material. Well, that was a really weird way to say that. This is essentially the node setup I do. So let me go ahead and show you that in Eevee Render. And I'll break it down real quick. So this texture here is a Voronoi using the distance calculation. I just crank the scale up and I use a color ramp to control the fall off so that the top gets cut off on them, but then the bottom also kind of blends a little bit better. Put that into a bump with a really low strength, because if you have the strength too high then it just overrides everything. So keep the strength nice and low. And then you have a normal, you can plug it into your principled. Oh, what happened? And then I plugged my bump into a layer weight for facing, which RGB curves, this is the curve I use. I multiply that with my base roughness that I want to use, so a little bit above the middle. And basically what this does is it just makes, it makes like the edges, you know, if you look straight at the skin, it's not reflective, but right on the edges it's reflective. And that's something you'll see in almost every material. It's just this isn't calculated on principled. And then I will create like your base colors that you can choose your colors. Let's have them be maybe a little bit green, bring down the darkness a bit. And then I multiply this with a noise texture. This is just to create sort of like a bit of dirt. The color ramp is just to control that noise so that there's less of it and it's more more dark where there is less of it, because if I don't, otherwise it'll just multiply a lot more. And then you can control your multiply, like how dark do you want these spots. I like to keep it just subtle. As for the principled, I do use a subsurface, a very low subsurface. You have it too high and then it becomes more like a like a Play-Doh almost. So keep the subsurface nice and low. And this subsurface is gonna, it's based on the overall size. So like if I apply the scale, I'm gonna have to adjust the subsurface scale to compensate for that scale. Choose your subsurface color, which I just choose, you know, like a red color, which would be your base underneath it. I set specular pretty high. If you have specular to 0, you won't get that reflectiveness on the corners like you see here. And that's pretty much it. Plug that into your material output. All of this can be baked, so you can bake normals onto this. You can bake your colors. Of course, when you bake, you're going to need to use cycles. But that's about it.